Hi, Jonathan York, Bay Financial Partners, looking at investment markets. Pretty big week this week with three of the major central banks meeting. Now, the Fed starts its two-day meeting today. Most people expect rates to be left unchanged, and it's just going to be interesting to see what sort of commentary comes out after the meeting. Because latest CPI data showed a fall in inflation again, that year on year is now running at 3.1%. And certainly if you look at the markets, they're sort of pricing in the Fed to start cutting sort of mid-2024. I'm really pricing in about a 100 basis point cut during the next year. Now, that's not the rhetoric that's coming out from the Fed and Fed officials. And certainly if you look at it, US equities on the face of it have done pretty well this year. The major indices are up around sort of 20%, with obviously the Nasdaq doing better than that, up over 30%. But then if you take out the Magnificent Seven, so-called, equity returns are actually pretty mediocre. If you look at Meta and Nvidia, they're up over 100% over the year. Apple, Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, they're up around 50% for the year. Now, certainly longer-term rates have sort of reacted to this sort of latest fall in inflation. 10 years trading around sort of 420, and the 2 years around 470. So it's just going to be very interesting to see how the market sort of plays out towards sort of year end. But also, more importantly, I suppose, sort of, first quarter of next year, if inflation continues to fall, then the market will continue to price in sort of interest rate cuts. And if you do have a slowing economy, it's going to be pretty hard for the Fed to justify those higher interest rates. Now, interestingly, oil, even with these sort of production cuts sort of holding into 2024, that's back below 70 bucks a barrel now. Currently around 68, 70 and change. Now, in the UK, the Bank of England also meets this week. No one expects them to change interest rates, but again, it's just going to be very interesting to see what commentary comes out after the meeting. Because looking at the UK economy has done much better than first anticipated this year, and going forward into 2024, growth is predicted to be around sort of 0.8%. Now, that's obviously pretty anemic, but that's certainly much better than what's predicted sort of a year ago when they were looking for a pretty severe recession. So again, if you've got sort of sluggish growth out there, an economy that really is sort of struggling a little bit, when will the Bank of England start to cut interest rates? Likewise for the ECB as well, they meet this week again. Rates are definitely on hold there, and sort of European inflation really has fallen pretty dramatically over the last sort of 3 to 4 weeks. And it would be pretty interesting that certainly, if the Fed did cut interest rates between sort of March and June of 2024, to see what would happen with the ECB. Would they follow suit? Now in Australia, certainly getting a little bit of a sort of pickup with the data coming out of China that is a little bit more encouraging and showing a little bit of growth coming through there. Now, if that is the case, then the Australian economy should do pretty well. Also, as well, you've got some pretty good migration numbers coming in as well. Now, here in New Zealand, a little bit of good news for the dairy sector. The latest dairy auction was a little bit higher. That was good news. But also, as well, Fonterra have just edged up their mid-price for the payout for this year. That's got a mid-price now of $7.50, ranges obviously $7 to $8. Now, the Reserve Bank doesn't meet again until February, but certainly, inflation here is falling in New Zealand. That is, food prices was down just below 5% now, which is, is a pretty big move after the sort of pretty horrendous numbers we saw sort of 5 to 6 months ago. Latest GDP figures will be out as well for September. They're expected to show probably a small sort of growth, maybe sort of plus 0.2 to plus 0.3%. Which again is pretty anemic. With inflation falling, there will be a little bit of pressure on the Reserve Bank to potentially sort of look at cutting interest rates in the first half of 2024. Now, certainly New Zealand economy is still being driven pretty hard by migration numbers. Interesting, there's been some upward revisions to previous months. So for the last 12 months now, it's looking around 129,000. Now that potentially does have some inflationary implications out there, but it should be pretty good for the economy to sort of keep it moving along. And certainly does take a bit of pressure off the jobs market as well. Now, obviously waiting for the mini budget coming out on December the 20th. Expected to be a very mini budget. Not really much in there. Potentially a little bit of indexation on the tax bands. So obviously, we'd just like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year from Bay Financial Partners. And we look forward to seeing you again in the new year. And for lots of interesting articles, go to the website www.bayfinancialpartners.co.nz for lots of interesting articles, and we'll see you next year.